The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday, and indeed it is. We're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park Money Radio Studios, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. If this is the first time you're tuning into our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. How do they do that? They do that by listening here. We're in our 10th year, and we are still going, and we're going because we bring these incredible guests to the show. And today's no different. I have here in the studio with me, I've got Denise Coventry, and she is with Honor in Integrated Medicine. She is a dietitian, and I am just so happy to have you here in the studio. I've heard about you before, but welcome to Health Futures.
Thank you, Bob. It's such an honor to be here today.
It's good to have you here, too. And you know, we talk about a lot of things here in the studio. And we talk a lot about health, and we talk about exercise, and we talk about advancements in dementia, advancements in Alzheimer's research. We cover the spectrum, but we don't talk enough about the fuel that we put in our bodies. So you're a registered dietitian.
I am.
And you are somewhat new with the Honor Health Integrated Medicine side.
I am.
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Oh, with Honor Health.
Yes.
Yes. Well, you know, it's a very exciting time because they were able to bring a program and open a brand new practice it was in November of 2021. And this is very unique in the state of Arizona because you have medical doctors who also have fellowships in integrative medicine. And typically you would find integrative or functional medicine outside of an allopathic setting. Maybe you would have to see a naturopath in order to get that type of care. And that's always a cash pay, cash for the provider, cash for those labs. And unbelievably, one of the physicians that works for Honor Health her name is Dr. Atienza. She lives this lifestyle, and she believed that it would be a wonderful time to open a practice in this that focused specifically on functional and integrative medicine. And she advocated for this for many years. It just so happened that the stars aligned and they were able to get from substantial support from really forward-thinking donors, the ability to bring this type of practice into the allopathic setting so that you're able to accept insurance to see providers who have this very specific training.
You know, it's interesting. The Honor Health Foundation has done so much in our community, and I'm connected to it through my folks who have been part of the Champions Plus program for 37 years, something like that.
That's
the Circle of Distinction. And you know, we at Cypress for the last almost 5 years, we've been working with them on their charity care program, patient assistance program for those that are discharging. So it is amazing how powerful our community is. And certainly Honor Health, many who've lived here for a little while, and I want to talk a little bit about your background because you've lived here for a little while. Remember, it is Scottsdale Memorial, and then it was Scottsdale Healthcare, Community Hospital. Yes. And the community is really what lifts up a lot of these programs. And I got to tell you, this is really interesting what you guys are doing. And it was really driven by a physician, right?
Yes, it was Dr. Atienza who really believed this. She lives this lifestyle, and she really wanted and hoped that at some point they could open a practice specific to this type of this specific area, essentially. And what makes it so unique is the fact that you are able to use through different lens, essentially, that you're looking through, opportunities for utilizing different types of support. Just imagine one of the providers offers hypnosis, medical hypnosis. We have very exciting programs coming through this year, where Tai Chi is coming in, yoga is coming in. We have an all-purpose space where these will be able to be in our own location. We have acupuncture coming in. We have myself as a dietitian, but also a health coach coming. It's really remarkable how you can utilize these different modalities to help support lifestyle. I'm very excited, and the practice itself is filled with really dedicated, remarkable human beings.
What's interesting is that you talked about early on, if you were to get these type of services, it was out of pocket.
Correct.
And the labs were out of pocket.
Yes.
So I'm making the assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a health plan, managed care, HMO, your own Medicare, many of these costs are paid for.
Not all of the labs would be paid for because they have a whole slew of new tools that can be used to identify certain issues that might be happening with chronic disease. But the office visits themselves are often covered, especially for the physicians.
Nice.
For the dietitian, there might have to be some extra work to look into specific verification of benefits in order to, make certain that that particular health plan can work with that condition. And I will say that you still need to have a primary care physician. This is not a practice about a pill for every ill. This is a practice about getting to the root cause of what concerns are. And in doing so, that means that there's a huge collaboration that's going to happen with the patient and with that provider. And through that collaboration, lifestyle changes actively are supported and encouraged in order to develop new mechanisms, essentially, that help to support health.
It's interesting. Like I said, when we kicked off the show, we've talked to a lot of people here in the studio, and I remember having a cardiologist in here a couple years back, and one of the biggest challenges we run into is that people that have heart attacks, what he said, and this physician said that within the first year, 70% go back to the living lifestyle they were. And after the second year, 90% go back.
Oh, goodness.
And, be a part of a health system that offers something like this to help cardiac patients and help, people that are dealing with diabetes and other illnesses is really, truly remarkable.
I am so proud of what they've accomplished to this point, and it's so exciting to be a part of something that's just taking off. I'm really grateful to be able to be a part of that at all, and I'm saddened to hear those kinds of statistics. The reality is that if, I don't know for you, but for myself, if every time I've had to make a really large, very impactful change in my life, I've always needed to have support to help transition through these different phases. Trying out new behaviors on a single thing like drinking water daily, that's a little bit different than having to change an entire lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have community and connection and those that you exercise with, those that you go to yoga class with, those that are supporting you and are a part of that similar mindset, it makes it so much more challenging to make impactful and these changes that are going to be lifelong. You really need the community to be involved. Many people, many ways to intersect with that. And that's what makes this particular situation and practice very exciting to me.
And you mentioned the support.
Yes.
And certainly, having a support of a partner or family member really makes it a whole lot easier, especially when you're talking about a lifestyle change and one that incorporates a complete makeover as it relates to your diet and certainly exercise. But I also, tend to think that what you guys are doing over at Honor Integrative Medicine is that you are also that support. You're that coach. You're that mentor. You're that person that's holding that person accountable.
Yes, and one that is cheering them on for the great work that they've done, and we're setting new goals to see what that next section is going to look like for them.
Well, as you hear the music, time does go really fast on our show. We got 3 more segments.
Okay.
I'm really proud to have in the studio with me, I've got Denise Coventry. She's a dietitian at Honor Health Integrative Medicine. We've got 3 more segments. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, we're in our second segment. I've got Denise Coventry here in the studio. She's a dietitian at the Honor Health Integrative Medicine. That's the Integrative and Functional Medicine group. She just joined there very recently and shared with us in the first segment what the commitment has been made from Honor Health to really helping our community live their best lives.
Exactly.
Live our best lives. So, you know, if you missed that first segment, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button. Third button down is radio show. Actually, it's the first button down, radio show, and you can catch this one and many, many more. So, you know, we were talking about, you know, obviously the fuel that we put in our body. And, you know, one of the things that we all experience through this pandemic is we all have experienced loss. We've lost loved ones. We have lost physical capabilities. We've lost, you know, many have lost careers and jobs. Everyone's experienced some type of loss. And during this time, you know, people have either cleaned up their diets or they may have not so much cleaned up their diets. So, you know, a lot of people get comfort from food, and a lot of people get comfort from alcohol. And alcoholism, as we've read and heard, is up across the board, and it's understandable. I mean, you know, these are really tough times. So I want to really just take a moment and really talk about, you know, living your best lives and really taking care of yourself. And, you know, when you really sit down, you think about it, you know, the fuel that we put in our bodies, the food. And, you know, I talked about the fact that self-medication is up, but also diabetes is really running rampant in a lot of the communities. And, you know, my father, who's no longer with us, you know, he fought with diabetes for many, many, many years. And diabetes affects every single organ in your body. And yes, there are some people may be predisposed. Some of them may have juvenile diabetes, but there are ways to prevent you from getting diabetes too.
You know, you bring up such great points, and I think that you were sort of circling around the idea that, you know, COVID, we had mentioned, had been something that had really triggered a lot of other conditions that might have been coexisting or were just beginning to emerge, and that quite suddenly you find yourself in situations where you are not as able to be mobile. You are not as able to have access to food. Maybe you're not as able to, when you are ill, it's very difficult to prepare food for yourself. And so we begin to rely on other things that are not a typical part of our lives. Now, I see a lot of individuals trying to grab a hold of this year very cautiously, you know, peeking around the corner to make sure there's nothing coming around at them that is like an unforeseen situation like COVID was, and to start with really good foundational efforts. And those are going to be things like getting even a reasonable amount of exercise if you're able to start with 5, 10, 15 minutes per day, starting with something like that. The ability to have food to eat in your home, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That in itself can be quite a challenge, especially if you are not doing the grocery shopping, or if you are having a hard time with transportation, or if you simply don't have the time. So we want to set a good foundation. I believe if you can start with the absolute simplest things first, what would be the easiest thing for you to be able to do? If you can start the morning with a big glass of water to get just hydration started, it seems like you can feel like you have a good first step. If you can make a breakfast that has some carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, and a little bit of fat, you are going to find that that is another good step in the direction you are trying to go, that is going to afford your body the fuel that it needs so you can think clearly, so that you can replenish those cells that help fight off and ward off different viruses and bacteria, so that you can live a life that you have the energy to meet and the direction that you want to go. When you follow that up with a very simple lunch, doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It's simple things so that it's very easy. And when you are pressed for time, that is something that you're going to be able to reach out and easily obtain. We don't have to eat, extravagant meals. It can be something as simple, a protein, like what about, something like beans, and you can put that over a salad of greens. Maybe with that you put some olive oil and vinegar, and it's the start of something, so that you are consistently providing yourself the fuel that your body really truly needs in order for you to gain strength again. And that would be said the same when it comes to things like diabetes or pre-diabetes. When there is that diagnosis, it can be so frightening for people to hear that. And quite honestly, if you have the diagnosis of pre-diabetes, that is the time to aggressively attack, aggressively move forward. And you do so by making sure that exercise is a part of your life, even if you don't have a lot of time doing so. Right after a meal would be a wonderful first step. Getting plenty of hydration, balance your meals. There was another dietitian at Honor Health, that said the cutest thing, and I just loved it. And she said, just be sure that think of it like the way that you dress, that you don't want to go outside with just your shirt on and you've left your britches behind. You need to make sure you've got your shirt, your pants, you need your shoes on.
Mm-hmm.
So the same for each of your meals. You want a carbohydrate, you want a protein, and you want a healthy fat, so that you have each of those working together to sustain your energy and allow you to think clearly.
So that was beautifully said. And you talked about breakfast and you talked about lunch. We didn't really get to dinner.
Okay.
And I want to talk about dinner too.
Let's talk about that.
Because, look, I 100% subscribe to what you say about breakfast. And my wife, Susie, would say, I have to have my breakfast every morning because that's the only way I get my day started. And I can't get it started any other way. And I'm in 100% agreement with you on lunch. I mean, you don't need to eat a big lunch. Mm-hmm. But I do want to understand dinners because, sometimes, we tend to eat sometimes a little later than we probably should, mm-hmm. especially as I get older. It's harder for my body to digest food if I'm eating at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Yeah. But, I really want to understand from your perspective, what do you feel is like a adequate meal for dinner? I mean, I know that a lot of us need a meal to get us through the night, and so we're not too hungry and we don't raid the refrigerator. Mm-hmm. But I'm just curious to what your thoughts are on that third meal.
I would stick with the same rule. Make sure that you've got all of your clothing on. You want to have
a carbohydrate.
Yes. And so in your mind, what do you think would be a good carbohydrate to have with your dinner?
Well, I think a good carbohydrate would be, probably vegetables. Right.
You could do, now sometimes they're going to be starchy and sometimes they're going to be non-starchy. So starchy one's going to be like peas, potatoes, and corn.
Right.
Whereas non-starchy is going to be virtually all those other vegetables: broccoli, bok choy, celery, cucumbers, things like that. So you could use a starchy vegetable if you wanted, or you could use a grain if that's something interesting to you. Mm-hmm. So a quarter of your plate would be that part. And then half of your plate full of non-starchy types of veggies. So what are your favorite types of veggies?
Well, I do love string beans.
You could do green beans?
Yes. I don't have a whole lot.
You don't have a lot on that list, Bob.
Carrots.
Yes.
I love carrots. You've got some props here. There's some things here that I do definitely like. I like lettuce, certainly romaine, and some of the other lettuces that you have here. arugula. I definitely. I think that's
Those
really
will
about.
work.
I think
Those
that's.
will work.
I think that's really about it.
Well, what do you think about a protein? Is there any type of protein that you have a preference for?
You have one right in front of me that is awesome. I love salmon.
Okay.
I love salmon. I do like a good steak or a hamburger every once in a while.
Of course.
So yeah.
Well, you could use something like salmon. If you are not too crazy about salmon, then you could also do, if you like any type of a lentil or a bean or a pulse.
I do lentils, yeah.
Those would also be great choices. And it's about just mixing it up, but it's very simple. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. I love what you say that if you push it too late, that you notice that it doesn't settle well when you're trying to sleep. And there's a lot of research and evidence that suggests that you need a good 3 to 5 hours prior to bed of being without any type of food, because you want that to have an opportunity to fuel you and your activities. And certainly when you're headed to sleep, having a full meal, although you're going to have some repair going on, it's not the same as if it was the typical activities that you might have if you were going to head outside to go for a walk, play frisbee with the kids, take a quick jaunt around the block. You want to be able to have these types of things a little earlier in the day, and it'll help your sleeping as well.
We're down 2 segments. First half is over. It's halftime here at Health Future. Stick around. I've got Denise Coventry here. She's a dietitian at Honor Health Integrative Medicine. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we're in our second half here. And if you're just tuning in, I have Denise Coventry here, and she is a dietitian with Honor Health Integrative Medicine, and we got a little blinded by the light taking us into the second half. Thank you, James. I appreciate it. Man for man, right? This isn't Bruce Springsteen, but we all know that Bruce actually wrote this. Well done, James. Well played. Well, listen, Denise is here in the studio, and we're talking about healthy eating. We're talking about really, trying to keep to the resolutions that we all have, is trying to get this year started right. And she was so kind to really bring in some props. And Denise, I would love for you to share with us what is here in the studio. And for our listeners, if you go out to our website early next week and you check on the radio media button, the button below its radio show, you'll actually see pictures of these, actually beautifully put together. So Denise, what do we have here?
Okay, well, today we set the table with the idea of trying to say, okay, it's the beginning of the year. We're probably trying to make sure that we don't catch the flu. And the idea I had was, what types of foods could I have over the course of the day that would help to support our immunity? And they happen to be the exact same types of foods that are going to help to keep inflammation at bay. So what about a breakfast? How do you feel about something like a Greek-style yogurt? Are you one that you can have something like yogurt?
I can. I don't usually choose that, but that looks really delicious.
Well, this is just an example of something that's got a lot of protein in it and calcium. The protein is going to really help assist your immune cells. You want to be able to have enough protein to make enough of those cells. And then you top it off with berries, very high in different types of antioxidants. And then the healthy fat is from walnuts. Each of these are going to offer a benefit to help reduce inflammation, but at the same time support your immunity. And I will say, we want to think of immunity as more than just a single type of food that we can eat or something that we can just take a supplement for. It's an entire system. So the goal here is to give your body the vitamins, the minerals that it's going to need to be able to start each of those little pathways that work to that are signaling and telling your body we need other things to happen. We need protein to be available in the form of hormones and new cells, and to help your mobility with good muscle tissue. And so that's just an example. And what about a lunch where you have grains, like this happens to be quinoa,
Quinoa,
because it is
yes.
higher in protein.
Yep.
This one is chopped kale with apples
looks
and
like kale and
avocado
apples, yep.
and nuts and cranberries. And then it's just over a little bit of arugula just to help puff it up a little bit and give you some more really good.
It looks delicious.
Oh, thank you so much.
It does.
What if you had a snack and you had some almonds and a pomegranate? Those are going to be very beneficial to support the anti-inflammatory type of lifestyle. And what about a dinner of grain? And you have, this just happens to be a type of rice with brown rice, salmon, and arugula salad at dinner.
All looks really, really good. And, you know, as it relates to breakfast, I don't eat Greek yogurt, but I probably should. And the nuts, the walnuts are looking really good, and there's a good source of protein. I do eat a lot of fruit. Strawberries and blueberries is usually my go-to in the morning.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I know that they have really good antioxidants.
Robust.
Yep.
Robust, among some of the highest antioxidants and polyphenols that are these amazing elements that help you with your immunity. Yeah.
So I want to ask you, you know, as we look at these items and certainly the fruits, you know, organic versus non-organic, and you know, it's confusing when you go to the store and you know you see a banana that is organic and one that's non-organic. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you know, where you see, you know, the benefit is? What do you recommend to your patients that come in? Do you push them to go the organic way, or if you just take, you know, organic, you know, blueberries versus regular blueberries, what do you recommend?
Well, I really appreciate that and starting the conversation about that specific piece, because right now it is very expensive to be at the grocery store and to make these decisions in terms of how far that grocery dollar is going to be stretched. If you have the budget and the ability to add in some organic foods, what you will be saving yourself is a concentrated intake of pesticide. And I really am, it's controversial in a sense. I really struggle with this because I don't want a person to stay away from fruit and vegetables if they are not able to buy organic, because they can be fearful of that. I would guide instead and say, have you ever heard of the clean, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15? I would utilize those lists, and they change every year, to be able to see what of the top highly most concentrated pesticides are for those Dirty Dozen, and try to just, if you are going to purchase organic and you have a very limited budget in that sense, go for that sense. So when you talk about blueberries and strawberries, they happen to be very high in pesticides if you are not able to, unless you buy the wild or the organic. So if that is not a part of your budget, then scoot on outside of that realm and get some different types of fruit and vegetable that tend not to be as widely utilized, so that you can stay out of the higher concentrated pesticides. And one of those reasons is that some people they'll be so shy from eating fruit and vegetables that their fiber intake and the protection that they would have had from those beneficial synergistic qualities is then going to really decline. And you don't want that. You want a robust microbiome where you've got really great flora that's in the stomach that's producing everything from neurotransmitters for you to also your immunity cells, and protecting you from the onslaught of different types of, you know, bacteria and viruses and conditions.
So just washing your fruit and vegetables doesn't get rid of the pesticides,
I'm
does
afraid
it?
not.
No.
I'm afraid not.
Yeah,
And some
yeah,
will
yeah.
try to peel in that definite. If there's any chance that you look at that Dirty Dozen and just instead select from the other side of it, you know,
No, I
bananas
appreciate that.
tend not to be on the Dirty Dozen, so that might be an option. But something like, you know, pomegranate, I selected that specifically because I thought, oh, that's very unique, and you can see it. It's very beautiful. These little jewel-like pieces, and
Right.
you can be very appreciative to food when it's visually appealing to you.
And it tastes so good. They kind of burst
Yeah.
in your mouth. They're really, really awesome.
Yeah, high in fiber.
So, as we get ready to wind down this third segment,
Mhm.
I'm just curious, how did you go down this journey to becoming a dietitian?
Oh my goodness. My family, I'm a fifth generation Arizonan, and
Fifth.
my
Wow.
family has been here for quite some time, and they came in with cattle and ended up selling and going into citrus, a small citrus grower along Baseline when Baseline used to be where all those big orchards were.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I came to the point in my life where I thought I really need to figure out what I can do that really depicts the same thing. What is it about growing vegetables and fruit and being able to be a part of something so wholesome and beautiful? And I learned about a researcher, Dr. Carol Johnston at Arizona State University, who is a wonderful researcher on vitamin C, and that's what made the whole thing click. I thought, oh my gosh, we have citrus. She studies vitamin C. So I applied for the program. And while I did take a couple of classes from her, I ended up studying under Dr. Sandra Mile-Kreiser, who does a lot of work with blue zones type of Mediterranean style
Right.
foods and how to lower inflammation. So that was the start for me.
Wow. And it's so, you're hitting on things that we all read about. I mean, certainly like Mediterranean diets and really really eliminating inflammation from our bodies. And the best way to eliminate inflammation is eating a healthier diet. And some of the things that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Well, we got the music going, 3 segments down. We got one more to go. We got Denise Coventry here in the studio. She is a dietitian at Honor Health Integrative Medicine, and we are going to close out the 4th segment and finish this off on a really good note because it is New Year's resolutions, and you're going to give us some really good tips going into the new year.
Very good. I can do it.
Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, I've got Denise Coventry here in the studio. She's a dietitian at Honor Health Integrative Medicine, and we're in our last segment here, and we've talked about a lot. You should go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com, click on the media button right below as a radio show. You'll catch those first 3 segments and many, many more. So here we are in our last segment, and I certainly want to talk about how we can live this healthier, better life. Here we are. It is Friday the 13th, January 13th. And, this is really important stuff because this is the fuel we put in our body. And this is what really contributes to the health that we hopefully enjoy. But there are lots of things that we can do to be destructive by putting the wrong things in our body. But, one of the things that you had shared, and certainly I'm looking at this one document, integrative and functional lifestyle root causes is sleep, exercise, stress, and joy. And we need to bring a lot of that back into our life. I mean, these last 3 years have been really tough for a lot of people. And I said that when we kicked off of the show. I mean, a lot of people are experiencing loss. And it's either physical loss, you may have lost someone you love, you may have lost a job, you may have lost, some money. But, at the end of the day, this is the best life you can live. We only get one chance at this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a dress rehearsal. We're living our lives, and moments matter, and we need to make these moments matter.
That's really, I can appreciate you saying that. When you think about trying to approach some new changes in your life, I think one of the greatest places to start is I really believe in screening. Go to primary care, have all your normal screening done so that you can stay on top of things before something unravels and takes a turn that perhaps we could have caught early on. And then after that, if you have a chronic condition that you are suffering from and you feel like an integrative or a functional approach would be appropriate, then, seek out a referral and see if that's something that you could fit into your life as well, and introduce yourself to what this other area is about. We were talking about root causes. This lens, or this way that you are approaching conditions, chronic conditions, where you are specifically trying to move away from medication, and away from a pill for every ill, is looking at not just an organ system and the failure of something related to that, but all of the support that needs to happen in different areas. You need to be able to have joy. You need to have stress reduction in your life. You need exercise. You need to be able to eat in ways that both satisfy your the things that you want to have, and also cover the needs that you have, and do so in a timely manner, not once a day, not a little snack here and some tea and toast later, but to really have robust, beautiful setups with lots of color and lots of variety, and to connect with others, to be a part of community, to contribute in ways that
so
are
true.
make you feel good and feel like you are doing your part. All of this is wrapped into your well-being and your health.
The community part is a big one. I mean, so many of us were socially isolated during COVID,
Isn't that the truth?
and we didn't really connect with others. I mean, human beings need other human beings. We need conversation, we need camaraderie, we need touch, we need a hug, we need a shake a hand. I mean, those are things that we were missing. I mean, it's incredible what happened to these kids, right? I feel awful for those kids for 3 years that were wearing masks and weren't embracing, their fellow students and friends. They weren't having play dates. There's no telling what the ramifications are going to be like this in the years to come.
Well, and it also means that we are communicating differently with one another. When you're wearing a mask and you have to do all that communication through your eyes, but you don't see the expressiveness and the acceptance and the big smile, it's so much can be resolved through acceptance and a smile, and
So true.
you get great gratification from that. And that's one of the reasons that I think connection is so very important, and it's so supported in our community, in our honor health system for integrative and functional medicine, that they are creating these programs to assist our communities to have much better connections. When you have better connections and food sources and access to care, you have more robust health.
No doubt. I do want to address one thing. You talked about screening and how important it is to go get screened by your primary care physician. I don't seem to understand, and maybe it's just me, but why don't they test for A1C often? It's usually not on the panel, and I always have to say, I want to get tested for A1C because my family, I have history. And I've never been in that pre-diabetic range, but I've been 5.5 to 5.6, 5.7, but I always want to know where I'm at, because you got to know your numbers. You got to know where you're at.
Well, do keep in mind that you have nonprofit, you have for-profit hospital systems or facilities, and they definitely, while are really reaching out to community and making these changes, you don't just use a blanket screening tool across. The screening itself is to kind of shake out the outliers and say, oh my goodness, look here, we have a fasting glucose that's not quite right. I wonder if there's family history, and then we should also order a hemoglobin A1C. So you still want to make sure that the baseline is being done, which would have been captured in that CBC and in your basic blood work, I should say. And then after that piece is done and you find something out of line, then you do the hemoglobin A1C. Don't forget that hemoglobin A1C is a 3-month average of the glucose.
Got it.
So check the glucose first. And so that's something that is definitely done in screening.
Well, that's something I didn't know. I learned something here today, so thank you, Denise.
Oh, thank you, Bob.
As we get ready to close this segment, you talked about the gut and gut health, and you talked about the flora. As we close it, can you talk a little bit about what you should be doing to have proper and good gut health?
You know, I think that one of the things that is so shocking right now, we were talking about some food allergies that have come up and people who've been tested, and it just seems so unusual that you have all these peanut allergies. And we were mentioning that sesame has just been added to the allergy list, and it used to
Right.
only be 8 common allergies. Where has all of this come from? And when you think about the integrity of the gut, integrity meaning that it is solid, that you can have an absorptive capacity or your ability to accept those nutrients in and out, but you only want certain nutrients. You do not want to have gaping gaps in that gut where large molecules are seeping through. And at some point, after eating foods that do not belong in these areas that they're escaping to, that you have an inflammatory issue that begins to develop and potentially exacerbating or initiating an underlying condition that could have, there might have been a genetic something there, but it wasn't expressed. And that's where some of the allergies are coming from when you don't have a strong integrity, if it's something that's been new, I should say, or you see a lot of autoimmunity concerns with that. So it can literally be the foods that you're eating by not having a wide variety of foods, but sticking with the same rotation of just a few foods. And then with the inflammation in that gut, it allows spaces for some of those large molecules to get inside of areas they don't belong. You get that inflammatory process started, and that's how you have this initiation of other syndromes, conditions, and issues that you've never seen before in yourself.
Well, it's interesting. You brought up a really good point because we talked about this in the break, is the importance of rotating your foods.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you talked about, having carbohydrate and protein and having the right balance in your meals.
Mm-hmm.
But properly rotating your foods and having proper balance will help lead to good gut health. And,
Yeah,
and organic foods that you mentioned earlier.
Trying to stay away from the pesticides, from the things that are going to really put additional stress on your body, because your body still has to get rid of it.
Right.
And it's already under a lot of stress, especially after many of us have had COVID in the past, and it really inflamed our bodies, and we might have something kind of underlying that's just emerging. So
Denise, how does someone get a hold of you if they need to reach you?
Well, you would want to get a referral. So go see your primary care
Physician
physician
first.
Yes. And then you can get a referral over to integrative medicine and have that sent over for a phone call to find out if we can get you on board.
Denise Coventry, thank
you.
you so much for being here. And I have learned a lot. And Lauren, we're going to definitely have to bring her back because there's so much more I want to cover. And food is just so important. And these props are great, making me hungry. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next Friday.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.